If you have to roll a 2 plus to charge, don't roll a 1.
Hey guys, welcome to the final video in my Dueling character series. Before I start, remember, I recommend new players to toy with dueling builds for a couple of games, get that out of your system. But if you want to start winning actual games of Conquest, don't bother with dueling builds. They are a point sink, and for tactical reasons, your opponents will just ignore the regiment that has the massively overcosted dueling character in it, and they will kick your butt. So don't bother doing it. Don't forget to join my Patreon. Link is in the description. I like money. And also like the video. If you're watching this, move your little mouse cursor over the thumbs up right now as you're watching me and hit the like button. It helps with the algorithm. It helps YouTube send my video to other people who do the search bar for Conquest content. The more likes I get, the higher in the algorithm I appear. Okay, so here we are looking at the tier maker ranking, and the first thing we're going to do is take the two casters, the Shaman and the Vulva, and stick them in the D tier. There is no supremacy that actually helps Nord characters in duels. So into the D tier, both casters go. I'm not going to bother looking over their options. Just don't do it. Who cares? Next, we're going to move over to the Jarl. The Jarl is the one that I would typically say is not a good dueler. Little did I know until doing my testing is that Nord duelers are amazing. Now, this is going to run into the same issue that I've talked about before, is that Nord duelers are probably the best in the game unless you come across Quicksilver, which we don't have Quicksilver. So keep in mind that this tier ranking is just Nords fighting Nords. And here is the issue. It's going to get a little convoluted, but let me see if I can explain this. Let's just get rid of the Shaman and the Vulva. So I've made both offensive and defensive builds for the characters, and they all typically have the same options, okay? So whether it's a Jarl, a Conager, or Blooded, they all have the same options. With the Conager, he comes with 3 Trove Finds that you can pick. That's just base for the guy. The other characters, I'd have to take Long Lineage to get a second item on them, but the Conager just gets 3 normally, which opens up a lot of possibilities. The Conager comes with base 2 evasion, and because the Conager can get 3 Trove Finds instead of 1, there are no third offensive Trove Finds for him to get. Basically, what you always get for every offensive character is Young Pioneer, which makes all of your attacks in duels smiting. And smiting just counts the enemy's character's defense as 0. Yeah, that's pretty insane. So consider the armor Rangrapia a Cleave Infinity. That's what it is. It's Cleave Infinity. You get Vinda the Dancer, which gives you extra attacks for all the hits you get, right? And that's pretty much all you need for offensive stuff. Because you have Cleave Infinity due to the armor, you don't have to take any item that has Cleave in it. And that leaves you with a third option. And the third option, funny enough, you get Herolf's Folly, which gives the character +1 to evasion. So because the Conager can take 3 items, he can just get his third item as a defensive item, which brings his evasion up to a 3. Now, once again, you may be asking, why are you talking about the Conager when you're talking about the Jarl, the Blooded? Well, because if you go to the Jarl or the Blooded, and you go for a defensive build, you just get 2 items. Herolf's Folly, maybe Massive Frame. But since the Conager has a defensive build built into his offensive build, he's like the City-States, I think it was a pole mark, where the best build you have is both a defensive and offensive build. And because the Conager comes with the Smite during duels, he absolutely destroys the defensive builds of the other Nords. It's not even close. So here's the thing. A Conager that has Vinda the Dancer that gives you 2 successful hits this character stand makes during a clash or duel action, right? Roll 1 additional hit and add any hits to the total number. So basically, if I hit with 6 attacks, I roll 3 extra hits. And because he has a clash of 6, guess what? They're all going to hit. Also, Headhunter, whenever he rolls a 1, you get 3 hits. So when I roll a 1, I get 1 hit. And from that 1, I get 3 hits. Now, some of you might be saying that's 3 instead of 1. Well, the rule doesn't say it. When I roll a 1, I get, it causes 3 hits. It doesn't say instead or in addition to. So if you play instead of or in addition to, that's up to you. And we're going to go over to, his base clash 6 gives him Relentless Blows. And Relentless Blows means that when you roll a 1 to hit, you also get an additional hit. That rule specifically says additional. When you roll a 1 with the Conager, you get a second hit from Relentless Blows, that's 2, and you get 3 additional hits from Headhunter, plus the 1 that you rolled. Well, I'm already counting that in the Relentless Blows, so it's 1, 2, so it's going to be 5. For rolling a single 1, you get 5 automatic hits. And being that the Conager has 7 attacks, he'll, on average, hit with 6 of them, one of them statistically being a 1. So that 6 plus 1 is, or 6 plus 5 is going to be an 11. You have 11 hits. Then you have to roll the Vinda, which is going to be 5 additional attacks. So you can get almost like 15, 16 hits from a Conager. That's insane. And they're Cleave Infinity. And some of you might be wondering, wow, the Conager is the best dueler in the game. Yes, he is! Unless he comes across Quicksilver. Once he comes across somebody with Quicksilver, they are better than him because they will kill him. Or so I thought. Because when I used to talk about the Conager versus Quicksilver builds, funny enough, I never really took into consideration Herolf's Folly giving him an evasion of 3. Meaning that when a Zilliarch or somebody else with Quicksilver does their 7 hits on the Conager, half of them are going to be ignored. I mean that the Conager has 6 wounds, he'll only take, 3 or 4 of them, meaning that he'll actually live. And being that the Conager is rolling with Huskarls, the Huskarls give him +1 to his resolve, +2 to his defense because of the Bastion and a +1, Bastion 1 and a +1 defense during a duel action. So without even doing inter-faction fighting, it has occurred to me that the Conager might be the best dueler in the game. Now, I won't know that until I actually crunch the numbers and sit here for an hour and roll dice against 1,000 different character builds, which I'm going to do over the weekend. I'm going to have some fun with that. All I can tell you is that whatever build you can make for the Conager, it's leagues ahead of the Jarl and the Blooded. And the Blooded has Cleave 2 built in, but who cares about Cleave 2 when you can just upgrade an item for, was it 10 points and just give them Cleave Infinity. So the Blooded and the Jarl I'm going to put in B, and when they fight each other, believe it or not, it's roughly equal. So if I do my little math here, an offensive Jarl will do 8 wounds to a defensive Blooded, and an offensive Jarl will do 8 wounds to a defensive Jarl, and same for the Blooded. Nords, funny enough, after jumping into the math here, I have learned that offensive builds flat out beat the defensive builds. So if you try to make a defensive character, the offensive version actually always beats them. Except for the Conager. The Conager's offensive build is also a defensive build. So going more into defense lessens the Conager's offense, and the Conager's defense actually loses to the offense. Because the offense is so oppressive from a Conager. I mean, 15 hits on average. That's average, folks. When you roll your 7 dice and you roll 2 1s, you can have over 20 hits after Vinda takes effect. I mean, it's crazy. Because the Conager can get an evasion of 3, his offensive and defensive build is probably one of the best in the game. I mean, Conager is just S tier. So the best dueling build you can make for Nords, offensive or defensive, is the Conager. There's no if, and, or buts about it. And the best build that you can make for a Conager that I have found is sticking in with Huskarls, giving the Huskarls a Scald and a Thane. Keep in mind, no supremacies will work with the Conager, as far as I have found. Conager will have a resolve of base 4, since he's in a regiment of 4 or more stands with the Huskarls. He'll have a resolve of 5. The Huskarls Scald will give him a resolve of 6. So Terrifying will just make him a resolve of 5 from like OD duelers. So he has a resolve of 6. And then his defense is a 2. He gets a defense of 3 because of the Bastion, and a defense of 4 because of the Thane, which also gives the regiment the Bastion. The Conager has a resolve of 6, a defense of 4, and an evasion of 3. I mean, this dude, I think, has the best character stats in the game when you take into account the regiment that he's in, which I've done for all the dueling characters so far. This guy is just a monster, but the thing is, he's 255 points. For just 200 points, you can make the Raven Banner version and then give your whole army resolve of 5. I think that's just better for playing the game, but we are talking about dueling characters. Will the Conager be able to beat Quicksilver characters and defensive characters in other armies? I don't know. I think he might be able to do just that. But he is definitely the all-star for Nords. I mean, if there was like an S++ tier, I mean, you could even do this. when you're deciding what dueling characters you want to build. I mean, there's just one choice. It's just a Conager. This would be legitimate for Nords right now. Everything's in D tier. I mean, technically the Jarl and the Blooded always beat the casters, so they would actually be C tier. But you can do this with the Blooded and the Jarl, and it wouldn't really matter. So this is where I would put the dueling characters for the Nords when they're fighting each other. Now, once they're fighting other armies, maybe the Jarl and the Blooded are higher. We'll find out when that happens. But for now, this is the final list for dueling characters. I will bring up one last thing. I know some of you are probably thinking about this. But what about the mastery of Watchful Eye of the High Kings, which allows you to duel twice? Okay? That's not what this video series is about. This video series is about once you get into dueling. The issue with Conquest is that when you make this Conager dueling build, half the characters in the game can just ignore you through some rule and then not suffer any consequences for it. Bodyguard, being mounted on some T-Rex or whatever. They can just say no and just not bother. Okay? Or if they don't have a rule that flat out says no, they could just say no and then break. So then you'd have to waste an item slot to just guarantee a second duel, but then you're not making a dueling build. You're making a breaking build. A character whose idea is to break and shatter opposing regiments. And the dueling is not even what you're interested in. You just want to have a Conager as cheap as possible with the Watchful Eye of the High Kings so you can beat other characters in duels. What you're not trying to do is beat them in duels. You're trying to shatter their regiment. So the Watchful Eye of the High King's item is not for dueling, it's for shattering. It has nothing to do with dueling per se. So, starting next week, I'll be doing the bracket tournament for duelers in Conquest. And the matchups will be voted on by my Patreon members. So if you want to see the Conager matched up with the Ziliarch, or, I don't know, a Lineage Highborn matched up with a Polemarch, my Patreon is where you need to be to vote on such things. So thank you all for watching, and remember, when you need a 2+ to duel, apparently, roll anything. I mean, you don't want to roll anything but a Conager, okay? Peace out, guys.